Welcome back to Whiskey Uncorked. Today we're going to be doing another one of my last drops reviews where we take a bottle that has been on my shelf that's down to its last few drops, give it a score, give it some tasting notes, and just generally try to keep it to the point. This is in contrast to my Monday videos, which we go into a little bit deeper detail about some industry conversations, personal anecdotes, or just general opinions. So in the spirit of keeping things brief, why don't we talk about the bottle that we're going to be reviewing today, Deanston 12. Now, Deanston is located in the Southern Highlands in Scotland and is owned by CVH Spirits, the parent company that also owns Bunnahabhain and Tobermory. So it's no coincidence that all three of these distilleries are generally thought pretty highly of in the enthusiast community, as all three of these distilleries typically are bottling at 46% or higher, non-chill filtered, and natural color, and generally speaking are thought to be fairly priced. Specifically to Deanston 12, this is coming in at 46.3%. It says it is unchill filtered and aged in ex-bourbon casks for 12 years. Now the bottle does not say that it is specifically natural color, but we do know that Deanston, Bunnahabhain, and Tobermory are all currently natural color. So for a long time I would have told you that Deanston 12 was an underrated bottle. But I think everyone says that it's an underrated bottle, so at this point, I'm just dropping that underrated tag and giving it the praise that it deserves. All right, so why don't we get this poured in the glass and start getting some tasting notes. Now, I will say up front that this has been one of my go-to whiskeys basically since the start of my whiskey journey, or particularly my journey into Scotch. A pretty healthy pour there for our last drops, but that's okay. We'll take it slow. But yeah, this one has been a whiskey that I grabbed onto pretty early on in my exploration of Scotch. And this is, I think, my second bottle of it overall. I bought this back in 2022 for $64 in the Denver area. Looking at it now, locally, it's about $72, although most of the stores that I generally check for prices didn't have this in stock, which is a little curious. But I did find it at a shop in California for $72. Now, for kicks and giggles, I went and checked the website of the store that I originally bought this from back in 2022, and it is still in stock for the exact same price of $64. So this $65 range feels about right. Bunnahabhain 12 and Lechick 10, these are also in that area, and these are kind of the other expressions from Bunnahabhain and Tobermory, respectively, that also fall under the CVH brand. It's kind of where they fall as well. All right, so let's get some nosy notes. It's a nice dense nose. The maltiness jumps out. There's also a bit of a sweet and sour. I'm going to go kind of a caramel and a pithy orange. Yeah, the complexity for this really kind of comes from the sort of sensation range, right? You can smell things that are sweet. You can smell things that are tart. You're getting a bit of a dryness, a touch of oak. Just a lot of that sort of sensation range complexity that you can get in a number of Scotch whiskies. So overall, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily complex in terms of flavor notes, but it is an interesting and fairly densely scented whiskey. All right, let's try it on the palate. Cheers. So as you chew on it, it kind of has almost a pillowy texture. It's a very pleasant thing to chew on and to taste on the front of your palate. You're getting a ton of that caramel up front. It's fairly sweet, but also has a little bit of that tartness. As you swallow it, in comes kind of the big maltiness and kind of a salty cashew, salty pecan sort of vibe. All right, let's go in for a second sip. Cheers. So fruit-wise, similar. It's kind of a citrus zest and pith note. I would definitely say it's more on the orange side of things. And you are getting some oak as well, but the finish is kind of short. This is what I kind of consider a lingerer. This isn't kind of on the back of the palate where it really blossoms and blooms into new complex flavors. This really kind of sits on the tongue, on the roof of your mouth, and you can kind of just keep tasting the whiskey rather than getting it on the back and kind of down into your throat. All right, so overall, this is a fantastic whiskey. It's not a hugely complex whiskey, although it is a densely flavored one. Both on the nose and the palate, you're getting a fairly full experience, particularly up front. Those ex-bourbon casks are really coming through and providing a nice range of flavors, if not overly layered or dramatic. The weakest part of the whiskey is, like I mentioned, is the finish. It kind of dies off pretty quickly, but it's kind of mitigated by the fact that it is sitting on your tongue and on the roof of your mouth, and the experience does continue to last. So as I mentioned, this has been one of the stalwarts on my whiskey shelf since I really made the transition into being a Scotch fanatic. Even though this is only my second bottle, I don't go through bottles very quickly, and the fact that it is my second bottle says a lot. So for a score, I think, if you've watched some of my other videos, you can maybe get this sense that I struggle with the score. And that's because prior to doing the YouTube channel, there was no stakes, right? I could give something a score and say gets a 6, a 7, an 8, whatever. It didn't really matter. But now there's a little bit of a responsibility, and it makes me think a little bit harder. A great example is my Ben Riach, the Smoky 12 video, where the more I drank it and the more I was doing tasting notes and trying to pick things apart, the less I liked the whiskey. And I have to be careful not to do that with this one. If I had a regular rotation of whiskeys that I always wanted on my shelf, Deanston 12 would probably be on that list for sure. So as I was doing the score and I kept bumping it down a little bit and finding a nitpick here and a nitpick there, I kind of worked myself down to a 6, which is above average. But the reality is my overall experience with this bottle, not just this one specifically, but Deanston 12 in general, says that this one can't get lower than a 7, which is very good. All right, in terms of value, as you know, I do not include value in my scoring. My methodology is to score the whiskey and then give my opinion on value, let you know what it costs, and leave it up to you to decide whether this is something that is in your budget and whether it sounds like it's in your profile, and ultimately allow you to decide whether this sounds like a good value to you or not. However, my personal opinion is that this is a solid value. With this creeping up to $65, $70, depending on where you may live, maybe even a little bit over, we're starting to push the boundaries for 12-year-old whiskeys, but the reality is a lot of the bottles that are of similar quality, similar renown as Deanston 12 are at the same price point. Now, as frustrating as this is for a lot of people, and as much as it is forcing many whiskey fans to look for more budget-oriented options, for me, this is still a no-brainer at about the $65, $70 range. If you're paying over that, you might want to look for a better deal somewhere else. However, you are going to need to be the judge of what's available in your market and what those things tend to sell for. So yeah, solid value. This isn't a bargain whiskey, but in terms of quality, if you enjoy bourbon cask whiskeys at all, this is a no-brainer to have on your shelf, and I'm happy to recommend it anytime. All right, and with that, let's wrap up another Last Drops review. Again, thank you guys for watching. These shorter videos are way easier to make and a little bit less stressful on me, although I do want to get better at making those longer form videos, because the entire reason I started this channel was to have some more in-depth conversations around Scotch whiskey and the whiskey market in general globally. So as always, like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate it immensely. It's always fun to get some comments and get a little bit of back and forth going, and just the feedback in general is good. But yeah, let me know what you think of Deanston 12. Is this something that is definitely on your shelf all the time? Are the prices still creeping up? It seems like this is still a pretty fair deal in the UK. We pay for it a little bit more here in the US. So this does seem like a pretty solid value if you're paying like the 44 pounds or so that it seems to go for. All right, until next week, another video on Monday. We'll probably be starting... I'm debating whether I'm going to go all in on this or not. But right now the plan is to kind of kick off kind of an 18-year-old series. I'm debating what the dynamics of that are going to be, whether I'm just going to review a number of 18-year-old whiskeys kind of in succession and then do kind of a roundup episode at the end, or if I'm going to kind of approach each bottle and just give my opinion and where I think it sits in the marketplace right now. Because the marketplace around 18-year-old Scotch whiskeys is getting a little murky. But until then, cheers.